Welcome to this kickoff event for the challenge that we're hosting as part of the astrophysics workshop. A brief agenda for you. Jean-Emmanuel is going to give us an introduction to the challenge. Then we're going to have a sort of motivational talk by Lawrence Colt about the need for automation. And then I will present some information on the challenge itself, most of which you can find on the challenge website. I will go over that and we will have a Q&A, and Stina will give us a little bit of information about the workshop itself as well. So over to you, Jean-Emmanuel. Would you like to motivate us?
Perfect. Thanks for everything, Mark. Can you hear me okay? Okay, fine. So maybe I will start by sharing my screen, if that's okay. Okay, so it's great to see everyone connected today and everyone interested into this challenge. I'm very happy to be participating in that. I'm going to be very brief also. So it's something that we discussed a little bit over a year ago during the last Astro meeting at Copenhagen. Through the AI group of Astro. And so this challenge is going to take place during the astrophysics workshop, as you know, in October. And I'm just going to discuss with you why it's actually, just as we said in the video that you saw online, why it's an historic challenge, why it's something that you might want to consider participating into, because AI is really disrupting radiation oncology right now. There are many different steps that can be, I would say, changed by AI. We are only going to be looking at treatment planning through these challenges, but I think it's already a nice first step. And as you know, there are already been a few challenges that have been published, mostly on target and organ segmentation, for example, in head and neck. And when we discussed this new challenge with the Astro group, we wanted to take it a little bit further and try to automate the dose. So the idea behind all that is that maybe some teams will be using target segmentation with AI and then dose calculation, and maybe some other teams will go straight to dose calculation. And so we want to...
Emmanuel?
Yeah?
We are not seeing your screen in presentation mode, if that is the intention.
Yes, that is intention. Let me try to stop the screen and restart it. Is that okay like this?
Much better, thank you.
Yes, so I was just saying there are many different steps that could be automated, but we are only looking at treatment planning through this challenge. And we know that there's been quite a few challenges that have been published already on target segmentation and organ segmentation. And we want to take it just a little bit further through dose optimization and dose calculation. And so it's going to be one of, or maybe even the first challenge where the teams will need not only to provide a target segmentation, but mostly a dose calculation. There are many different implications that are going to be happening in the coming years. And so we think that Astro has a role to play in these changes that are coming. And so this challenge that you are going to participate in is one of the first steps toward that direction. So thank you for participating, and stay tuned for the practical information regarding the challenge. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jean-Emmanuel. I will head straight on to Lawrence Colt, who will give us a very high-level overview and motivation about why we want to do automation at all.
Thank you for the invitation. I can't tell you how much my kids were laughing at me when I told them I had to give a motivational speech. So I will at least try my best. and try and, I'm sure most of you realize, but this is a fun challenge, but also something that we can all do something that can impact people, make a difference in people's lives. And I think that's what makes it extra special. So funding and conflicts of interest, just briefly, you'll see most likely that most of my understanding of what I'm going to talk about has come from our own development of something we call the radiation planning system, which is just auto-contouring, auto-planning, but specifically designed for clinics in low and middle income countries where the need is the greatest, and here's our funding sources. So this map shows the percentage, an estimate of the percentage of patients who could benefit from radiation therapy who actually have access. There's been a few of these types of publications out in the last few years. They all give basically the same message, though, and that's that in high-income countries, we expect to have some level of reasonable access to radiation therapy. That's not true in most of the rest of the world, quite honestly. And so you can see here it varies, obviously, as you would expect from country to country, but much of the world, less than 50% of the patients who could benefit from radiation therapy actually have access. And it's estimated by 2040, which is really just around the corner, the majority of annual cancer cases will be in lower middle income countries, about 70%, but less than half of those patients have access to radiotherapy. It's also estimated if we could close this gap, we could save almost 1 million lives a year. So that's a pretty, if I need to motivate with anything, I think that's a good number. If we could even, do some of that, that would be pretty amazing. It's not just access, though. It's also access to high quality radiotherapy. So, many of our patients are treated with IMRT or VMAT, which has been around for a while. But a study in Africa fairly recently, in the last year or two, found that only about 1/3 of operational centers in Africa were using this type of treatment. So that has an impact on patient outcomes, especially in terms of normal tissue response. There's also other disparities. There's many disparities. There's huge disparities, quite astounding, really, in terms of access to clinical trials. So a recent study showed that 83% of trials are conducted in 25 high-income countries and less than 5% are in low and middle-income countries. So you see, that means we're basically using trials to decide how we treat patients, but it's almost entirely based on patients in high-income countries. You might be thinking, well, of course, there's a disparity. There's a shortage of treatment devices. That's very true, and that's shown, at least for Africa, in this map here, which shows the number of people served by each linear accelerator. And you can see there's many countries without any radiation therapy. And then the varying shades of green and orange show the number of people served by each LINAC. Just for comparison, in the United States, there's about 1 LINAC for every 88,000 people. And in Europe, obviously varies from country to country, but on average, there's about 7 LINACs per million people. So 1 LINAC per 140,000. So completely different to the numbers you see here. And you can imagine when you're going to buy, if you're in the position to buy new equipment, one of the first things going to concern you is, well, once we've got the equipment, who's going to do the plans? How are we going to use this? If we're going to buy something that can do IMRT or VMAT and sophisticated treatments, how are we going to create the plans? And that's part of the subject of this challenge. There's a lot of shortage in oncology staff. This is another of these maps. This one's showing the number of new cancer cases per oncologist for different countries across the world. You can see there's a lot of variation. And it's estimated, if we go back to that map that I showed at the very beginning in terms of access to radiation therapy, it's estimated if we really wanted to close this gap using current treatment approaches and staffing models, we would have to find about 50,000 radiation oncologists and medical physicists. That's a huge number, especially when you consider their training, where people tend to go through graduate school, they then go and do residency, and a lot of the training is sort of one-to-one. So this is, I don't know if it's unfeasible, if that's the word, but it's definitely a massive challenge. And so we really need to think about solutions that are going to help these clinical teams scale their efforts And so the people that are in place right now can treat more patients with high quality planning. And that's high quality plans. And that's where this challenge really comes in. This is a sort of schematic, big picture schematic of the radiation therapy process, which I'm sure everybody on this call is familiar with. You know, we start with the diagnosis, evaluation of the cancer by the physician. There's the CT scan. The physician prescribes the doses, and then they do the contouring. They then pass that information to the planner, who tries to figure out the best plan they can. Once they've gone through this entire process, they then go back to the physician. And, you know, it's pretty common to expect that the physician wants some edits. There's some iterative processing goes on. Eventually they approve the plan, and then it goes back to a different group of people to do QA. So this is why, you know, this is why we need automation, because this is such a long-winded process. But luckily, AI and other automatic tools are really perfect for this. These are perfect tasks for automation. And so what I've done here is draw lines around, circles around the tasks that are really ideal for automation. We can do it now. This is what we're going to show in this challenge. You know, we start with the delineation of the targets and the normal tissues that can take, you know, 30 minutes if you're lucky, maybe several hours if you've got a complicated case. And you know, you think often when we talk about challenges, we just think about contouring. And then when you look at the whole process, contouring is just you know, it takes a long time and it's difficult, I give you that, but it's really just a small part of this whole process. So after the contouring, the planning, all of this, really, we are in an era where this can all be automated with AI or other tools. And if you do that automation with sufficiently high quality, you're going to reduce the amount of iteration that you have on the third row here. And then there's QA. And I know we're not really looking at that in this challenge, but I think the next step, maybe next year when Mark organizes the next one, we can include QA so that when there are problems, and there will be, you know, there is risk involved if you have bad quality CT or unusual patient anatomy or what have you, you do need to have some level of automation to support the manual QA processes. So if you automate all of those things, you know, you really do make a massive difference in terms of workflow. And we spend so much time doing plans and checks and contours, all this stuff for individual patients. So we can really save some time. So there's definitely gains in efficiency. We can save, you know, for a complex head and neck case, for example, you can save a few hours of physician's time and also several hours of the treatment planner's time. And then importantly, there's reduced handoffs. So every row, if not more in that figure, but on the previous slide, involved me taking information and giving it to somebody else. So even though I finished the contouring, the next person who started the planning is just going to sit on their desk until they finish whatever they're doing. So reducing the handoffs really does make a big gain in efficiency. And that's where the end-to-end, not just automating contouring, sorry, and automating planning, but doing the whole process in a single step really comes to the front. There's also, you know, efficiency is fine. There's also massive gains really in terms of quality and safety. And I'll talk a little bit more about those in the next slide, but we can really improve consistency of treatments between institutions. There's a lot of data that are out there about how different people contour things differently and how different people treat things differently. You know, it's different if physician preference, also the quality of the planner, what their background is. You know, plans can look quite different, you know, and it's really personally, you know, I work in the medical center here in Houston. It's sort of a little bit offensive that I feel like if I go to hospital A or hospital B, which is right next door, I might get a completely different treatment just because of the local preference. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but not positively, that's for sure. In any case, so quality and safety, so we can improve consistency, quality, and again, reducing handoffs. Remember, every time you pass information to someone else, there's the risk that you pass it incorrectly or they mishear you, there's miscommunication. So there's increased risk when you have a lot of data being transferred or information being transferred between people. And I think a lot of these gains are really only possible with end-to-end planning. So, you know, we always talk about contouring and planning as if they're separate tasks. They're not really separate tasks. And that's why I think this challenge, it was just mentioned that this is the first challenge that does it all together. I think that's really exciting. And that's the way everything has to moving forwards. You know, obviously, when you do everything end-to-end, there's less handoffs. You can also have an impact on the contour edit. So you think right now we automatically contour and then we give it to someone and they do a bunch of editing. We're really losing a lot of the benefits of the process, because people are editing, I think, things that they don't need to. And we've found that if you look at the figure on the top right here, this is where we looked at the amount of edits our different dosimetrists are making for head and neck structures that are automatically contoured. And so each of these box plots is a different person. The one on the right is everybody. And you can see dosimetrist 1 is doing less edits than everybody else. Dosimetrist 2 is doing more edits than everybody else. You can't really tell if that's a good or a bad thing, but definitely sometimes people have been very picky and editing things that don't make any difference to the plan and don't make any difference to the outcome of the patient. So once you combine this and you've actually got dose information, maybe people will change how they edit, and we'll really see these gains in efficiency and quality. There's also many, many other things that we can gain once we start automating all these processes. Once we've suddenly got a situation where everybody is being treated the same, perhaps if we could really put this globally and have a better understanding of treatment response. There's papers out there that show that just the difference in planning that you see in clinical trials in radiation therapy planning can be as large as the difference that you're looking for in the trial outcome. So really you can look at treatment response much more effectively when you've automated these processes. And then also look at toxicity, and then things like radiomics, quantitative imaging. So those are the benefits really to the clinical teams. We can really gain efficiency and consistency and quality. They also project to the patients, of course. So we get improved equity, equality and equity. So low and middle income countries have the least personnel and equipment. So if we can really provide these tools and give the same tools to everybody, that really helps with equity and also dignity. There's many patients. This is a bullet point from my friend who works in South Africa. There's lots of patients dying with uncontrolled disease, bleeding, pain, etc. And really to be able to provide high quality treatments could really help with dignity. I tend to focus on the situation in low and middle income countries. This is not just a low and middle income countries challenge. There's many challenges in high income countries. Okay, there's maybe more LINACs per population, but many people still don't have access. This is just data from the United States where 20%, almost 20% of the population live in rural areas, but only 7% of oncologists practice there. And in many, many counties in the United States, there aren't any medical oncologists. So there's okay, this is a treatment planning. I don't have the data for treatment planning, but you can imagine there's a challenge in terms of access to high quality care here as well. And then we also hoping to improve quality. So once you've got things automated, everyone can look at it and you can really get a view as to what's the quality. And I think there is some data out there that suggests that the variations in planning from place to place or person to person are quite large and are really impacting patient outcomes. And I've got an example on the right where the top row are clinical plans that we downloaded from TCIA. The bottom row are automatically generated plans for the same patient. And you can really see there's a difference in quality. The one on the left column is more extreme than the right, but you can see you've got this sort of clinical case has this sort of donut around the cord. It's got a much higher dose to the back of the neck than you really need, as well as bleeding of the dose into the oral cavity. And then the right-hand side got more hotspots than you need, as well as this sort of bleeding into the oral cavity that's just unnecessary. So if you automate these in a high quality way, so not just making things go from end to end, but focus on the quality, you can really bring these high quality plans to everybody. And then of course, reduce time from CT to treatment. So we can do this. I mean, this is why we're having the challenge, I guess, because it's actually feasible. It's a little bit on the edge, but it's doable. There are barriers to deploying this sort of tool across the world. This is some data from a paper from Wendy McGuinness, who put a survey out to providers in Botswana, South Africa, Tanzania, and Guatemala, and looked at the potential challenges. And you can see, quality is not really the challenge. They can see that quality is going to be there, but there are challenges in terms of internet access, cost, and administrative. And I think the one that we can really think about in this challenge is cost, because once, okay, it's difficult and you've got to have the data to be able to create these auto contouring, auto planning tools, but once they're created, they're there. I mean, you know, we're all everyone who's on this call thinks we can make these tools reasonably well. So the cost has got to come down and improve access to everybody. There's other risks as well. So when you automate things, there are things that we need to think about. So you can imagine if you have a patient who has like a hip replacement, for example. So I don't know if Mark's going to throw any of those into the mix for this challenge, but if you do, that's going to give us all blood pressure, and because you can imagine that the hip replacement is going to mess with the contouring, it's probably going to mess with the planning. If you have a manual process, then people are going to look at that, and they'll do some overrides of density. They'll use different beam angles, things like that. With automation, it's very likely, unless you've planned against this, that the solution, your tool will just give an answer. And so it's very careful that we do look at risk. This is a study from Kelly Neelan that's published in Practical Radiation Oncology, looking at risk when you introduce end-to-end automation into radiotherapy. And you can see, especially if you look on the right, which are the high risk failures, operator error, even though we've automated everything, operator error is still the highest potential risk. This is because you still need people to decide things like prescription, to upload data, to take the CT scans and things like that. So operator error, automation bias. Well, now the tools are so good, there's a risk that people just assume they're great, don't check them quite as carefully, and then of course they're not going to be perfect all the time. And then software error. So my point here is perhaps it's a message to Mark and the team that next time we need to have QA stuck at the end of this as well, because there are definitely increased risks. Overall, the risk might be reduced because of quality and consistency, but I think there are risks that maybe we don't usually think about that need to be incorporated. But this is all very feasible. It's 2023, the contouring is very doable, the planning is very doable. These are just a couple of examples from our group. I'm sure everybody has examples similar to this. Upper abdomen contouring, comparing manual and automatic. We have this contouring in our clinic. It's used all the time. And then automatic planning, manual and automatic, get basically the same answers. So you can really, this is a doable thing. And this is just this is something I'm particularly proud of, but this is really showing that you can do this and you can make a difference. So this is, we have full field box, soft tissue automatic contouring, and then full field box planning. We've worked through that process, and we had a team at Ocean Road Cancer Institute in Tanzania test this with 30 patients. There was one patient that the CT scan was too short, so the thing failed. But other than that, they were all considered ready for use and could be edited to make them exactly ready with less than 4 minutes. So the entire process less than 4 minutes. So that's quite nice. And that really, I think this is a nice demonstration that these things are all possible. So this is my last slide. And hopefully get you excited about what we're going to try with this challenge. And we're going to automate the contouring and planning. This is needed right now. This can make a massive difference. It's something we can all contribute to, which I think is really nice. If we've got access to the data, we can automate these things, we can make a difference. I'm really hoping that AI in this level of automation is the equalizer so that we can bring high quality planning across the world. And with that, just say thank you to the organizers and good luck to everybody with the challenge.
Thank you, Lawrence. I think if you're able to stick around, we'll do Q&A at the end. So if there are questions for Lawrence on his work on low middle income countries, you can sort of grill him then. But for now, we will move on to take a look at what the challenge entails. There we go. Hopefully you can all see that. So an overview of the challenge. Well, what are you being asked to do? It's simple for me to say, perhaps harder for you to do. You will be given a CT scan of a patient. We're just doing prostate patients for this challenge. And you are asked to do fully automatic contouring and fully automatic planning. The aim is to fully automate as much as possible, as Lawrence was saying, trying to reduce handoffs, trying to reduce manual steps. I recognize that if you're combining multiple systems, there may be some sort of need for data transfer between systems, and a little bit of manual passing of data is fine. Automated QA, while not part of the challenge, is completely welcomed. Towards the end of the challenge, there will be a sort of questionnaire about what you've done. So we'd love to hear about what you're doing in terms of QA. Part of the astrophysics workshop is also to look at QA. So anything you do around automated QA, it's very welcome. Basically, the only rule is no manual editing or checking of the contours or the treatment plan. We want to know what full automation looks like. And I think there is going to be a very strong temptation to have a look at your results, perhaps before you upload them and check they're all right, or maybe, but at the point you've looked at them, if you do something to your code and you do it, run it again, you've effectively done some level editing. So we want to know what your automation looks like. Yeah, so submission. On the website, you will be asked to submit a single zip file. That should have a flat file structure inside. All the files should be in DICOM format, and you're being asked to submit an RT plan, an RT dose, and an RT structure file. So you can see here an example of submission I've done just for the data verification phase, where there are 9 files because there are 3 cases. They're just all DICOM files. You zip them up in a single zip and upload that to the website. In terms of contouring, the website will detail this for you. I have selected a number of guidelines. We have compiled these into a PDF that you can download from the challenge website. The clinicians contouring the ground truth have been asked to follow these guidelines, but they are clinicians contouring cases and following guidelines to the extent they choose to follow guidelines. So I can't guarantee that these are guidelines are what they've actually followed, but this is what we've asked them to do. Yeah, all of this contouring information is on the website. In terms of PTV definition, you will see there are 3 types of cases you're going to be sent. There are prostate only cases, there are prostate plus nodes, and there are prostate bed plus nodes. This is the PTV definition for the prostate and nodal levels. These follow a clinical trial protocol. And you will get example prescriptions like this. So given a particular expansion margins for your PTV definition, you have a target dose, and there will be some minimum dose constraints, maximum dose constraints, and median ones. So all the different case types and all the OAR constraints and prescriptions are on the challenge website. And that's, rather than me talk you through each case one by one, that's going to be the easiest way for you to find out what you're needing to hit. I'm aware that for some of you, this isn't what you do in your clinic. The prescriptions I came up with are clinical trial-based prescriptions. They are reasonable prescriptions for treating prostate, but they're not universal. And clinics do different things, and particularly when it comes to treatment planning. So if you're using something, I forgot the name of it, Varian's Magic Rapid Plan, that's the word, Rapid Plan. If you're using Rapid Plan and it's based off your clinic stuff, you may not be able to do the prescriptions I've come up with, but don't panic. Do what you do anyway. The purpose of this challenge is to look at the question of automation. It's not really to know what the best prescription is. So submit your results. Don't expect a high score. Don't expect to be winning the challenge necessarily, because you won't have hit the prescription. But in the questionnaire with the final challenge, let us know what the prescription you used is. I may be able to tweak the scoring code to score your prescription to say, well, if we'd have been running to your prescription, you would have got this. But what we're really interested in is to see the information to understand what is achievable and what isn't achievable. Yeah, there will be a questionnaire. We're going to ask you to describe your methods at a very high level. I am encouraging vendor participation in this because we want to know what is academically available. We also want to know what's commercially available. So I am not expecting people to disclose all the details of their algorithms unless they want to. But we want to know at a high level what you've done, how you're approaching the challenge. I want you to disclose any manual steps you make. So for instance, if you have to do data transfer from one system to another manually, tell us what you've done manually. Be nice to get an indication from you of the workflow time. How long does it take to process? How long is it from feeding in that CT to getting a treatment plan out at the end? I think it would be useful to document what the regulatory or clinical status of your system is. Is this something that is a work in progress or something you're using in the clinic day to day? And as I said before, if you've had to use an alternative prescription, if you can't hit the prescription that I've specified, would like you to detail what you've done. In terms of the scoring, which is, I know what you're probably almost interested in, how can you win this? Well, there is no such thing as a good plan. Every clinician has their opinion on what a good plan is, and chances are none of them are right. Ben Nelms, quite a while ago now, came up with the idea of doing planning studies to compare plans and came up with a measure or a way of combining plans into a plan quality metric. In his case, he took, I think it was 5 different experts and asked them, what a good plan looked like for prostate, and came up with some curves which essentially convert dose constraints into a score. And you have a different curve for each of the different dose constraints, and you add them all together and you get a final plan quality index. Rather than using Ben's particular one, partly because he's licensed that to a commercial entity, I have come up with some very, very simple ones. The aim here is to give you a scoring measure that is available to you. You know how it's going to be scored, and you can hit the target. A good score on this just means you're going to hit the dose constraints particularly well. So for the median dose, there is a prescribed tolerance of 1%. And effectively, if you hit the prescribed dose with the medium, you will score 1 for that target. And if you're more than 1% outside, you will be scoring 0. And anywhere in between is just a linear slope between 0 and 1 as a percentage of the prescribed dose away from that prescribed median. Similar linear approach is taken for the prescribed minimum and maximum. What we're assuming is we want a completely homogeneous dose to the target. So you score 1 if you hit that prescribed median dose, and you will score 0 if you're outside the given minimum or maximum. And again, it's a linear slope down. And then we have the outer treatment volumes, because we have the high dose PTV and then we have lower dose PTVs. Effectively, we are going to use that same 1% tolerance. And again, it's on a percentage of the prescribed dose, where if you hit the target dose, you'll be scoring 1. The further outside that target dose you get, the less you score until it's 1% outside the target dose, at which point you'll score 0. There's a very similar scoring then for the organs at risk. And I'm going to make all of the scoring code available on GitHub, so you can tell me how bad my coding is, or find any bugs in my code. But what we want with the scoring is complete transparency, so you know how it's being judged. But as I say, there is no such thing as a good plan, and you may well come up with a good plan. What we want to see is really the automation, and just have some way of making the challenge competitive and interesting for everyone. In terms of the ground truth, well, we will be scoring the dose against a consensus ground truth. So although you will be submitting your contours and you will plan against your contours, we're going to base the score on this consensus from 3, I say, hopefully clinical experts. I have data from 2 experts at the moment and partial data from a third. So your dose will be scored against the consensus, and that will give you your competition score. Also available, once you've submitted, you will get your dose against each expert. So you can see how you're scoring against each of the individual experts. And there will be a normalized added path length score, a measure of the quality of contouring against those experts and against the consensus. But the only score that's going to count is this overall sort of score against the consensus. I probably should have said in here somehow how I'm combining these scores. Having scored everything between 0 and 1, essentially they're going to get summed up, and the OARs and the target volumes are going to be equally weighted. So for each case, you're going to get a score out of 100. There is, other than the prescribed dose, there is no guidelines on what treatment you should do. What we want you to do is keep it real, make it something that can be delivered by a machine, but also is a practical treatment plan. You could do endless arcs and make a very detailed dose volume, but it would take hours to deliver and it wouldn't be clinically reasonable. So yeah, keep it real. Your RT dose volume should correspond or must correspond to your RT plan. There is no automated checking of this going on, but if we have a look at the results and go, ooh, that looks a bit suspect, we might run it through a treatment planning system. The treatment plan should be deliverable on some machine, and it should be plausible to the extent, we're expecting people to be using standard Linux. Not many people are using Proton, say, for prostate delivery. Scoring. Well, what will you get? I have, if I can find the right tab and share it with you. Are you able to see the web browser now? Good. I have submitted some plans and dose, and I've broken all my own rules, and I looked at all the data beforehand, and it's all made up, and you can actually deliver what I've planned. But I have faked some data just to see if the scoring system worked, and I scored a nice 162 out of 300, because there are 3 cases for this phase. And if we have a look, you will see that you are going to get scores for each of the constraints out of 0 and 1. You get the added path length, you get total scores, say for OARs and targets and overall, and you're going to get that for each case. So all of that is available, and the only thing that matters is going to be the total score. But all of that is available for you to analyze where things have gone well for you or where they haven't gone well for you. And hopefully, as we discuss this at the workshop, we might find something interesting out of that lot. In terms of the phases, as of now, you should be able to submit to a data confirmation phase. This is 3 cases, which I must make available for you to download, otherwise you can't submit. It's 3 cases, 1 each, one prostate plus nodes, and 1 prostate bed plus nodes. The purpose of this phase is for you to check that you can put the data in the right format, test run your system. You're very welcome to look and see how well your system's performing on these 3 cases, and you will be able to upload as many times as you like. But its purpose is really just to check that you are able to upload the data. So, if you score worse than I have, don't worry about it, as long as you get a score out. This is an opportunity for me to help you debug your your DICOM files, if there's a problem, this is an opportunity for you to help me, or yes, you to help me in terms of making sure the scoring code is doing what we expect, and to come up with any weirdness in DICOM that I haven't accounted for. Depending on the progress of my third contourer, I expect we will make the challenge, the actual challenge, available by the beginning of August. I hope to make it available as soon as possible in July. But you will only be allowed 3 submissions. As I said, the aim is to look at automation. It's not to look at getting the best possible score by repeatedly trying and repeatedly tweaking the algorithms. There will be 10 cases for that challenge. And then finally, on October the 13th, we will have an in-person challenge at the Astrophysics workshop. And this is an opportunity to process one of each case. And the purpose of that is really to demonstrate the level of automation. If you haven't registered your interest in that workshop, Estro have now pushed back the registration date till the beginning of July. So you can still do that if you go to the Estro website. That will be a limited number of participants at the workshop. You do not have to attend the workshop to participate in the challenge, on that online challenge. And likewise, if you participate and you choose not to turn up with a computer to the workshop, you know, we'll all be very disappointed, but understand that sometimes it's not possible to travel with a supercomputer. But really, you know, the aim of that in-person challenge is to foster some discussion, say, you know, what does automation look like in practice? And then there'll be the question of who the winner is. Well, as I've said, the scoring is perhaps somewhat arbitrary. The consensus contours may not agree with everything. I'm hoping that the winner of this will be the patients and the community in terms of understanding automation, pushing the field forwards. Jean Emmanuel and I have discussed ideas about having potentially multiple winners. We would like to take some of these plans and put them in front of radiation oncologists and get a sort of people's vote award as well as the quantitative score. For now, that quantitative score will be the magic, and there will be a winner. But actually, if you hit the prescriptions and you are able to fully automate it, you know, everyone's a winner. So I've mentioned a little bit about the workshop. Stina, would you like to say some more on that before we go to Q&A?
Okay, so this whole challenge is a part of the Astrophysics 2023 workshop, in the sense that, I mean, you can combine the participation in the challenge with participation in the workshop. It is not mandatory to have done the challenge in order to participate in the workshop, and vice versa. But it would probably be very interesting for many of you who plan to participate in the challenge to also submit a statement that you would like to participate in the workshop. So the astrophysics workshops, many of you will be aware of this concept already, takes place annually. And there are a number of different topics that are in the workshops every year. And this year, one of the topics is there, AI for the fully automated radiotherapy treatment chain. So this is organized by myself, Thomas Jansen, Charlotte Brauer, Jean-Emmanuel Bibot, and Mark Gooding, as several of us are participating here today as well. So we have 2 scopes of the workshop. One is what we've just talked about, gauging the extent to which we are able at this stage now to perform fully automated treatment. So as Mark has also repeatedly said, the aim here is automation. How far can we get in automation and in getting from scan to plan to deliverable plan? And that part is linked to this challenge here. So there will be the challenge online, and there will also be an on-site challenge during the workshop. And the second aim of the workshop is to discuss QA programs for implementing AI in the clinic. And Mark also briefly touched upon that. So we are linking this to how far are we in doing fully automated treatment, and how can we move to a best practice of implementing that into the clinic. And there will also be on-site an on-site exercise relating to QA for use of AI in the clinic. So the expected outcomes are to partially to relate the results from this challenge, both the online part and the on-site part, to produce a white paper on appropriate QA program for adoption of AI, and last, to potentially recruit new members into our ongoing work in the ESTRO Medical Physics Future Working Group on Artificial Intelligence and Radiation Oncology. And some of you might be interested in participating in that ESTRO effort in the future, and you will hear more about that if you participate in the workshop. So when you go to the ESTRO webpage, and I'll give you that web page in a moment, this is what it looks like. You can see it takes place from October 13th to 14th in Italy. And you will see a web page here. There's a number of different topics, and you will have to, in your motivational statement, which topic you're interested in. Oops, this should not have been there. It is before July 3rd, you can submit your statement. And the way it works is that you write why you're interested, who you are, what's your background, why you're interested in participating in the workshop before July 3rd. And we, as the organizing committee, will then receive your applications. And unfortunately, we only have a limited number of seats available at the workshop. So we will have to make some choices to have a diverse workshop with people with interest in the different parts of the workshop and with different backgrounds. And hopefully we will be able to include several of those who have participated in the online challenge to also be part of the workshop. I think that's what I wanted to say. So we have the date, July 3rd, and there are some QR images which you can, and the web pages here where you can go to register or to submit your motivational statement for the workshop, and also the one for the challenge here. Okay. And let's go to the Q&A for the online challenge. And there are some questions in the chat, Mark. Are you seeing them?
Yes, I have. The first question was any specifications on treatment technique. I think I covered that in my talk. You can take any treatment technique you like as long as it's clinically plausible. There might be some discussion around what clinically plausible looks like. Thomas asked, would I rather have you tweak your tweak or use your clinical technique? I think it would be nice if you can tweak your technique to meet the prescriptions. That would be best. I think one of the interesting questions is how easy is it to adapt to different prescriptions. If it's not possible for you to meet those prescriptions, as I say, don't be put off participating. We'd love to know what you can do, even if it's not hitting that prescription exactly. And then we've got a question from Quinn Matthews saying, effectively that we might penalize plans with higher conformity to the PTV of the experts, just on particularly on the minimum dose point. Yes, it's true. He proposes that maybe we could consider the input CTVs, and I will go away and have a think about that one. But yes, at the same time, I think we've kind of got the interesting scenario that the prescription is to the PTV and clinicians do differ. this is why having multiple experts is going to be quite interesting to see. You know, maybe some of the plans will score highly for one expert and less highly for another. But yeah, I will have to think about that, and the website will update up until the point that the challenge actually starts, at which point it will be fixed. Carlos Cardines asks, are MR images provided for target definition? No, they're not. So these are CT images from a clinic, and this is what that clinic has used for treatment. Whilst in the Western world, we might be using MR for target definition in various places. I think to Laurence's point about you know, equality, we want to go with the most basic possibility. One for you, Stina. When is the workshop committee notifying participants of acceptance to attend the workshop?
We, as soon as we are able to. So all applications, all motivations go through the ESTRO office first. So depending on when we will receive them, we might need a week or two. And we are during summer, July and summer vacation for some at least. I hope by the beginning of August, we will have notifications sent out to everybody.
And Lawrence agrees with Quinn. Are there any more questions? And feel free to unmute and ask them or put them in the chat. Or if you've got any questions for Lawrence, feel free to ask him some difficult questions too.
Hey, Mark, this is Carlos. Just
Hi, Carlos.
a question on the added path length.
Yeah.
Are you guys contouring the entirety of the CT scan? Like, how are you planning to score differences outside of the treatment field?
So the only organ or region that is going to potentially be a sort of partial region will be the bowel bag. The added path length is going to get reported per organ, so we'll be able to see what's going on there. But all of the other structures should be complete structures.
Thank you.
But that, yeah, the added path length is there for information and for discussion, but it's not part of the scoring. Right. Well, if there's no more questions, we will bring this to a close. Feel free to ping me, email me, tweet at me if you do have any more questions. I say that I'm trying to update the website to keep it in line with our current thinking, but it is open to change. So if you do have any feedback on the challenge up until the sort of 10 case proper challenge starts, yeah, feel free to make suggestions. I will put those couple of websites in the meeting chat for everyone in case you haven't found them or you didn't get the QR codes. There you go. Well, thank you for attending, and yeah, I hope to see you participating in the challenge and at the workshop if possible.